Good morning. Welcome to episode 129 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'm joined, as I am each and every Thursday, by Mia O'Brien. You can catch the show that she co-hosts, Helmets and Heels, each weekday afternoon from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern on 92.5 and 1010XL. Mia and I are going to be doing some paper plate awards today, so I'm very, very excited for that. But Mia, welcome back. Appreciate you joining as always. How you doing?
Hey, very excited to be here on a schedule release Thursday, Gus.
Mm.
We are going to react a little bit to the schedule. Of course, we're going to have full reaction on 1010XL and 92.5 FM throughout the day. We will have our annual video version of the way too early schedule predictions with our hosts. And so we will go through that. We actually are going to be doing it in the TV studio this year. So a lot of room for activities. So it's going to be lit, as the kids say. And so keep an eye out for that on the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel as well today. But we are here to give out some awards. I was a big paper plate award kid. This doesn't surprise most of you who've been listening to me for the last 6+ years, if not longer. I'm in my award show era, Gus. I emceed the Aussies a couple weeks ago at UNF, their athletics award banquet. And we've done multiple iterations of the Wubbies, as we're calling it, on the Women's Basketball Podcast. I think producer Dimitri over there is like sick of my love for award show. And so I'm excited to bring it instead to Duval Rundown.
Now, okay, let's talk about the schedule. I've got a lot of follow-up questions as it relates to the paper plate awards. But let's.
I know my love for paper plate awards. Yes, it does merit a lot of questions.
We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that really quickly. But first, we do want to break down just our kind of general off-the-dome takeaways from the Jaguars' schedule release, which the full NFL schedule was released last night on Wednesday at 8:00 p.m. Eastern. Mia, like, what's any big takeaways? I guess my only big one is that, like, the Jaguars' schedule seems pretty clearly tougher before their Week 8 bye than after. So if they manage to get to be even 3-4 or 4-3 or something like that heading into their bye, then they can be in actually a pretty good spot to make a post-run bye and get into the playoffs. But that was really like my one takeaway after glancing at the schedule. Did you have any thoughts after it came out?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think when it comes to schedule release, the fact that the NFL has somehow, some way taken over another portion of the calendar year it's a tribute to them that they've been able to just somehow, some way manifest an entire event through thin air like they have with this event. So I would like to credit the Shield for that. Ultimately, we don't know what these teams are going to be. I can sit here today on May the 15th and say to you, yeah, the Jets probably won't be that good, or, a Broncos team that made the postseason last year, but now is going to have to face a first place schedule, or I guess technically third place schedule, but obviously a little bit more arduous of a schedule in 2025 than they did 2024. Maybe Bo Nix takes a step back. For all we know, they could be the top seed in the AFC heading into that December 21st meeting. And so I always preface schedule release with, we don't know what these teams will be. We can only tell you what they are right now. And so, look, I'm very curious to see how it plays out, but I still think it's way too early to tell, which is why we're going to slap some W's and L's against a whiteboard at 1010XL later today. But biggest takeaway for me, Gus, I was on BetMGM last night, and those boys were quick to note that the Jaguars will log the 4th most miles of any team in the National Football League in terms of travel this year. I actually think the schedule is going to play in their favor because they really, and I know that November is kind of a weird month. It's despite only being 30 days, it feels like one of the longer months of the calendar year, at least during the football calendar. So the Jaguars will only have to get on a plane and go either to the West Coast or across the pond to London once per month, right? So end of September, they will go to they will go to San Francisco, and then in October they obviously will go to London, and then in November, the beginning of the month, they'll go to Vegas. Later in the month they'll go to Arizona, and then in December they go to Denver. And so point being, it actually is pretty spread out, and I think that actually bodes much better for this young squad than a lot of folks were anticipating.
Yeah, the Jaguars also don't have any Thursday night football games. They do have the London game and then a Monday night football game in Week 5 against the Chiefs. That one is at Arrowhead Stadium, right, Mia? Or is the Monday night football game at home?
It will be at home.
Oh, okay. So Monday night football at home against the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 5. But again, the Jaguars don't have any Thursday night football games. And because they have the bye immediately following the London trip, they won't have any big rest disadvantages, which is obviously a positive thing. And so let's move on. Let's get to the real topic for today, the paper plate awards. First, I wanted to ask you, did you receive any paper plate awards? I'm sure you did, but any that you remember from your own time as a youth athlete? I know I got one for tennis in high school, but I don't remember what it actually was for. It was probably just like the Gus Logue Award or something dumb.
Yeah, circa 2000. What I was in high school from 2007 to 2011. That must have been like the peak of the paper plate awards. I guess that's why I'm a child of the paper plate award generation, or at the very least at Freehold Township High School, it was a big deal. And I played 2 varsity sports for 4 years, and so I received a lot of paper plate awards. A lot of times these are inside jokes, but as I joked with Kevin when I was prepping for this podcast, needless to say, most of my paper plate awards had to deal with my very loud volume and my very loud voice. I know that doesn't surprise most of you. But yeah, I'm very excited to bring it here today. I will note that I did also get actual plaque awards from my 3rd varsity sport, Gus, which I nerded out on Helmets and Heels yesterday with one of our wonderful guests, Addie from FanDuel TV, who's their horse racing analyst, who did speech and debate in high school in Arcadia, California, with RJ Saunders, our producer. What are the odds? 6 degrees of separation. And so, yes, my 3rd varsity sport was speech and debate. And I received the most spirited award 3 straight years, my sophomore, junior, senior year, probably because they couldn't give me an award that said I was loud. I think I got a paper plate award, though, that did say I was the loudest. So I don't have a most spirited or loudest award that we're going to give out in our preseason paper plate awards for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I've got a couple that kind of are on the fringe of that. Why don't you kick us off, though, Gus? Because we've got some traditional ones that we got to get those out of the way, too.
Yeah, so the first one is Offseason MVP, which is really our only templated one, and it's mostly just because I threw it into the title for YouTube. But I kind of have a different name for Offseason MVP. And so the name of my first paper plate award is the Steal the Show Award, which I'm sure a lot of listeners of the show understand the reference to that interview of the lady outside of the Jaguars' stadium however many years ago saying that you don't want any newcomers to come in and steal the show. I would do an impersonation if I thought I could do it justice.
It's all right. Intern producer Thomas is just going to throw it into the reel. I'm not really worried. He'll make sure it's there in post.
So the Steal the Show award goes to James Gladstone for stealing the show and being the Jaguars' offseason MVP. I think when Trent Baalke was let go as Jaguars general manager, a lot of people were probably more so just happy that that Baalke was gone, and just like was happy with pretty much anyone not named Trent Baalke being the Jaguars' general manager. And a lot of people would have been pretty happy if that general manager just kind of like was in the shadows, was less of a public presence. Not that Trent Baalke was like ever super public, but just the perception of him was very public. And so I think that James Gladstone, instead of being that guy that was just kind of like in the shadows, doing his job well, but not like making a big deal out of it, he's kind of made a big deal out of it. And I don't think that like it's necessarily like an ego thing. I think he just has like crazy confidence. Like when he was at Jaguars minicamp and like there was like the videos and the pictures of him up there on that second level looking down at the practice fields, everyone was like, oh, James is just aura farming.
The
and
aura,
like maybe
the aura's off the chain.
Yeah. But I think that's just like he's like, it's not like he's like, oh, I know the camera's pointed at me, let me like look cool. That's just how he is. He's just a bold and confident guy. And clearly that's been like the result of the offseason in Jacksonville. Obviously with the whole trading up for Travis Hunter at 2nd overall is kind of the epitome of the highlight, obviously, of their offseason. But in terms of like him coming in and like preaching intangibly rich into the ground and being a true just character in not just Jacksonville, but in the NFL, I don't think that anyone expected for the Jaguars' new general manager after Trent Baalke to be such a prominent figure. Again, not just in Jacksonville, but in the NFL. Plenty of people outside of Northeast Florida are very interested in this guy and this team now. And so James Gladstone stole the show. He's my offseason MVP.
I love it. I even said to Mayor Donna Deegan, who was kind enough to join us on Helmets and Heels yesterday, I truly believe that the way that James is speaking to us, that's how he speaks to his family and friends. So it's not an act, people. Like,
Right.
trust me, I've talked to enough people around the Rams organization now to tell you, like, this is how he talks at the bar. Like, and you got, it's endearing, it's authentic, and that's what the Jaguars are striving for. My first paper plate award, since we led off the show by talking about my paper plate award experience and that I consistently received paper plate awards that regarded my spirit and my loud volume. The Chit Chat Award. This goes for the player who will perhaps be the biggest talker on the field and has certainly already been spewing and talking off the field as well, which we appreciate because I think he listens to the pod. That is Jacksonville Jaguars newcomer Jordan Lewis. He gets out of the Dallas Cowboys organization and he's just letting it fly. And I think that speaks to James Gladstone, Liam Cohen, the authentic philosophy of what they want their players to be here in Jacksonville. I'm excited because so many guys around the league have come out of the woodwork to say that Jordan Lewis is one of the best trash talkers in the game right now that no one is talking about. I just go back, Gus, to his time at Michigan where like I was covering Iowa at the time, and like he was regarded as like this, like, you know, high caliber, high IQ, high character. Like, this is the guy who you want to build your team around. Like, he is the face of a franchise. And I enjoy when someone who's intangibly rich also can talk a lot of trash and talk a lot of smack and call out a podcaster or two. Please, I'm here for it. I want more of that. So the Chit Chat Award goes to Jordan Lewis.
I love that one. That's a good segue into my next one, which is the Hungriest Dog Award, because
Okay.
obviously the Jaguars brought in a lot of dogs this offseason. Their whole mantra was intangibly rich guys, guys that love the game of football, guys that play not just to the whistle, but through the whistle. A lot of dogs entering the building this offseason. And so the biggest dog of all the dogs, obviously Jordan Lewis, was certainly on my short list and should be on anyone's short list. You could certainly say he could be the winner of this paper plate award, but I put down Robert Hainsey, the center from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know that Gladstone and Liam Cohen both raved about the game that he had against the Saints in his only game of action last year, because the Buccaneers did draft his replacement, Graham Barton, in the first round. But when he got the chance, Robert Hainsey just showed that dog that he has in him. And I think that if and when he continues to show that dog, that'll be huge for the Jaguars' offensive line, and especially their interior, and especially the center spot, because I think that there hasn't been a lot of dog at that specific position for a long time now. Like, Luke Fortner was what he was, and then on the bookends of the Luke Fortner experience was Mitch Morse and Brandon Linder, who are two fantastic NFL players, but they were both like kind of in the back end of their careers. They're both retired now, and so they didn't really have like as much finishing ability as at least they did earlier in their careers. And so I think that Robert Hainsey, even if he's not like the most technically sound guy, even if he lets up a little bit more, like has a little bit more blown blocks than we might like to see or love to see, I think he will bring that dog to the offensive line and the interior offensive line. And I think that would go a really long way. So Hungriest Dog Award, Robert Hainsey.
I love it. That's kind of been a talking point coming out of the building. Well, yes, certainly Liam Cohen and James Gladstone in the public eye have noted that Saints game where Robert Hainsey came off the bench and started and played tremendously for the Buccaneers. Ultimately, to your point, and this is a philosophical conversation that I'm not only having with the Jacksonville Jaguars and covering them, but even in looking at the collegiate and the high school level and speaking with coaches and just giving my insight and my thoughts on team building. You know, this idea of you don't have to have 53 choir boys. Like, you need someone who maybe's got a screw or two loose. And I'm not saying that that is a negative thing. I'm saying that's a good thing. You want somebody who's maybe, for lack of a better term, this is a podcast, not terrestrial radio. You need someone who's got a little bit of a prick, because you need someone that has that edge, that little chip on their shoulder and wants to prove something. So I appreciate that, because I do believe that is the mentality that Robert Hainsey is bringing to Jacksonville, especially after probably feeling slighted after a first-round rookie comes in and takes his starting job in Tampa Town. Mine's a little similar. I've got a 3-pack for you, Gus.
Okay, great.
So this is in paying homage to my friends at One Shining Podcast, one of my favorite college basketball podcasts. It's on the Ringer Network. You should go check it out. Shout out Tate. Shout out Kyle. Shout out Jay Kyle, man. They're the best. So they used to do a segment, and they've kind of evolved it since Mark Titus left for Barstool. This guy, that guy, and the bag guy. So we're going to give out 3 paper plate awards for that guy, which is to say you see him on the field and kind of like the dog in Robert Hainsey, you see it and you say, oh, that's an alpha. This guy, as if to say, this freaking guy, as in he's still here. That's just this guy, man. Let me tell you about this guy. And finally, the bad guy, which I will leave up to your interpretation. Although I guess this is professional sports. So unlike college basketball a couple of years ago, because now we can talk about money there. We'll leave that one up to your interpretation, but I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. So let's start with that guy, because this leads into that conversation we were just having about Robert Hainsey and that dog on the field. I have 3 nominees. I'm going to let you select who the paper plate award goes to, Gus. So for me, when I say that guy and I think of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think of who is that guy who is breaking the huddle, who is hyping his team up, and you're like, oh, he's that guy. And so the 3 nominees that I present to you are the 3 young faces last year who at different points during the calendar year, I went to people in the building and I said, isn't this concerning that you've got 2 second-year players and a rookie, and they are perhaps your 3 most vocal leaders? And so I'm going to give you those 3 names and you tell me who will be that guy in 2025. Is it Ventrell Miller, the Florida linebacker who certainly proved a thing or two after missing his entire rookie season due to injury? Is it Jarian Jones, who Robert also has nominated in the YouTube chat? You guys can submit your nominees as well as your paper plate awards in the chat if you're watching us live on YouTube. Or is it Tank Bigsby, the much maligned 3rd-year running back, but again, much like Ventrell, much like Jarian, not afraid to use his voice when he needs to? Who is that guy in 2025?
Yeah, as you were going over kind of like the parameters or the description of that guy, my mind continued to go back to one guy, and that was Ventrell Miller. So that's going to be our winner of the That Guy Paper Plate Award. Because Ventrell, I think, not that these other 2 guys like don't have the same thing going for them, but I think Ventrell really like backs up his words on the field. And like, even if he's not the most productive linebacker in Jacksonville or even the best performing linebacker in Jacksonville on the field, I do think that like the effort that he shows on the field is kind of reflective of like how passionate he is as an off the field voice. And so like, I honestly, like, I think maybe the highlight video of the 2024 Jaguars season might have just been Ventrell Miller, like hyping up the troops before like a week 4 game or something like that. Cause especially after a couple injuries, there was not a ton of highlights in general for the Jaguars. But yeah, I like Ventrell Miller for that one.
I also like Social in the comments giving his that guy, this guy, bad guy, which, yes, on One Shining Podcast, they've also done bad guy in a good way, too. Social has submitted Jarian Jones as bad guy in a good way. I agree. He told us as much on Helmets and Heels a couple weeks ago when he came on with us. You know, he recognizes what we were just talking about with regards to the Hungriest Dog Award. You need someone with that screw that's a little bit loose, someone with a little bit of edge. Social nominated Luke Fortner for this guy. We did our 53-man roster projections last week, so I'm not even going to lament that about whether or not Luke Fortner is going to be here or not. Love Luke Fortner. He's definitely a nominee. I'm going to give this guy to Andrew Dewey Wingard because he's still going to be here, folks. If he's not, I will be shocked. And if you are keeping score at home, that means that Dewey Wingard will have made this team under the Doug Marrone, Tom Coughlin, Dave Caldwell administration, survived the TC departure and that finals 2020 season with Doug Marrone at the helm, the Urban Meyer debacle, the Doug Peterson, Trent Baalke era, and now the Liam Cohen, James Gladstone era. He's still going to be here. He's still going to be bringing the vibes. There was an opportunity, Gus, that if he did not get hurt, he could have been a starter last season just because of all of the dysfunction in the back end and the lack of a safety emerging as a starter. So yeah, let's give Dewey this guy.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's perfect. That was the same thing, honestly, when you were like going over the description of this guy. He's still there. He's been hanging out forever, but he's still a contributor. Yeah, I think Foye Oluokun would be like an interesting short
Mm.
list member.
Yep.
But yeah, Dewey Wingard definitely fits that description.
Yeah, there may be a media member or two who maybe doesn't like empathize with Foye's style. As someone who will be, talking college basketball with Foye at random days and hours of the night, like I enjoy Foye. He's a friend. He's a friend of the pod as well. Okay, so we're not going to do bad guy, although I loved Social's suggestion of doing bad guy in a good way. If we had a paper plate award for that, I do think Jarian Jones is certainly a candidate. I have another one that he could potentially be nominated for here in just a second. Yes, thank you, Dell. Helmets and Heels college basketball analyst Foye Oluokun. My apologies. Let's finish this triple header before we get to one of Gus's paper plate awards with the bag guy. I have 3 names written down, and the one I'm going to give it to, I'm going to say the name, and there's going to be a bunch of you in the comments, a bunch of you listening on demand, and you're going to say, yeah, he's the bad guy because he robbed the Jacksonville Jaguars of a 3-year contract in Trent Baalke's final month and a half of his tenure here in Jacksonville. But I am giving the bad guy award to Walker Little because I believe Walker Little's going to wait for it, ball out in his first full season as a starter. He's only 26 years old. And much like Brandon Scherf once upon a time when he departed the Washington Commanders and then he got another bag from the Jacksonville Jaguars, Walker Little is putting himself in a situation where he can cash in again 3 years from now. And therefore, he's the bag man. He's figuring it out. And I know that there's some haters out there in the streets, and that's fine. But yeah, bad guy of the year goes, or the preseason, I should say, goes to Walker Little with honorary mentions. Although one of these names is going to pop up again a little bit later. Travis Etienne in a contract year, and De'Ami Brown on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Trayvon Walker, I think, is also up there. That'll be my next one. Stamp of approval award. So I'm interested in like who you would give this to, Mia, whether it's Walker Little or someone else. But stamp of approval award. So basically, like I'm putting my stamp on a guy that I think is going to have a really great 2025 season for the Jaguars. And so Trayvon Walker is my pick for this one. He is entering a contract year. 2025 is the 5th-year option for him. That's true, right?
Yes. Oh no,
Okay.
this will be year 4 of his rookie deal.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
picked up the 5th-year option, so he's still under contract for 2 years.
Right. And so he is under contract for the 2025 season and the 2026 season. So the Jaguars don't necessarily have to extend him anytime soon, but Liam Cohen did say that they've already had conversations about Trayvon Walker in regards to a contract extension. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it happened like right before the season or really early in the season if he started to like put together a good start to the season. But Trayvon Walker is definitely going to be playing, even if he isn't in a true contract year, is playing for a big money extension. He's playing for his big second contract deal. And I think that that'll certainly be like extra motivation for him. But I also think like when you consider the back-to-back double-digit sack campaigns that he's had the past 2 years, he's just continuing to grow. He's always been a great run defender, I think, and has always like had some like plugged some holes of like kind of like underappreciated areas of the game. And obviously like the pass rushing stuff and finishing at the quarterback has slowly been progressing. But I think this is a year when it could all click together. And even like tackle for loss numbers, just like I think he's going to be making a lot more plays in this scheme under Anthony Campanile. And so it's going to be a lot easier to kind of recognize him as a great player. And like hopefully this year we'll kind of, I guess he'll never stop being compared to Aiden Hutchinson, but hopefully this year we'll kind of like slow the tracks on that a little bit and be able to just say these are 2 amazing NFL players. And so like whether one was picked first and one was second is not that big of a deal.
If nothing else, the fact that they extended and offered up and said approve on the 5th-year option before Trayvon Walker officially began the offseason program in early April. That is the biggest seal of approval I think that you can get. So I agree. As much as Robert in the chat nominated Josh Hines-Allen, Brian nominated Eric Armstead, I would submit another name to that equation, and that is Mason Smith. The Jaguars did not sign any interior defensive linemen. That was obviously it's something that may or may not come up in future Duval Rundown episodes because it's confounded many around the National Football League, knowing that the Jaguars struggled along their defensive line at different junctures last year. But it's a seal of approval, in my estimation, a stamp of approval from this new administration to say, hey, we believe in the guys we have in this room, and we believe we are going to be the ones to develop them.
All right, Mia. I got like one or two more good ones, and then a bunch of others that are not as good that I can just kind of run through at the end. But give me your next paper plate award.
Yes, this is the Evan Ingram Memorial Peacock Award. You just have to let him fly, folks. We love you, Easy. I have two names on this list. In the spirit of Evan Ingram's one-year contract he signed prior to the 2022 season, De'Ami Brown is a nominee for the Paper Plate Award for the Peacock of the Year. Jarian Jones is also nominated. Gus, which of the two would you like to give the Evan Ingram Memorial Peacock Paper Plate Award to?
I thought Brenton Strange was going to be a candidate for this. Just in terms of like, you got to let him fly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think that's only fitting. We probably have to give it to him since he's replacing Evan Ingram.
Yeah, I think we give it to Brenton Strange. He was one of the, I had him down for an award too, but let's give this one to Brenton.
Love it. Love it. Okay. I've also got the Unsung Hero Award, which we will give to Emmanuel Ogbah, solely by virtue of, and I got a kick out of this morning on the drill. Dan and Jeff were arguing, is the roster better now? And Jeff goes, on the defensive side of the ball, the roster is solely better because they actually signed a third edge prior to OTA's beginning. And I tend to agree. Now, at the same time, we also thought that that was the case a year ago when they did sign, if only, some guys that they would trade later to potentially be that third edge. And so, look, I mean, we don't know what Emmanuel Ogbah is going to be. We don't know what he has left in the tank. I'd like to believe, though, knowing that Anthony Campanelli also coached him when he was in Miami, this is a guy who he knows. This is a guy who he trusts. And so, yes, Robert, finally, Edge 3, Unsung Hero Paper Plate Award goes to Emmanuel Ogbah.
I think a good guy that would be on my short list, at least for that award, would be Eric Murray, the safety, because the Jaguars did pour a lot of investments into their secondary, both at safety and at cornerback. And I think if we're like towards the end of the season, we're like looking back and we're like, man, this Jaguars defense, but especially their pass defense is so improved. Like, how did that happen? And I think Eric Murray could be an unsung hero in that, and like where he might not necessarily get a ton of production, but just in terms of being a glue guy, in terms of being an unsung hero, I could see a path towards that happening.
We got to pull up Brian's comment in the chat right now, Gus.
Cleveland. That's good. I don't know how I didn't. Now I'm mad at myself for not giving the Cleveland Browns any kind of award. That would have been really good. But yeah, shout out Brian. Cleveland is the unsung hero of the Jaguars' 2025 offseason. I got one. It's another old Jaguars reference, the award.
Okay.
And that goes to Brian Thomas Jr., because I think that now the player that opposing teams are going to be most scared of in 2025 will be Brian Thomas Jr. Obviously, you got to know where Travis Hunter is on the field at all times on both sides of the ball. Trevor Lawrence and Josh Hines Allen and plenty of other players are also going to be a threat. But I think Brian Thomas is just in like the perfect environment. Like, obviously, he was already marked as an ascending player given his amazing 2024 rookie campaign, and the fact that receivers like typically break out in their second and third seasons in the NFL. But then you also will hopefully have a healthy Trevor Lawrence. You've got Liam Cohen scheming up plays now. And I think perhaps maybe not more important than those two facts, but almost as important is the fact that Travis Hunter and De'Ami Brown are now on the roster to just take away eyeballs from opposing defenders and be able to open up just that much more space on the field for Brian Thomas Jr. So I'm expecting a huge, huge, huge campaign in 2025 from Brian Thomas. So, here he comes.
He's definitely my preseason prediction for offensive MVP for this team. I have one paper plate award left, Gus. And I'm not going to lie. I think the chat wins the day again because they've sparked a new idea in the back of my brain. This is the Office Dad Award. I wanted to give it to the reigning Walter Payton Man of the Year, Eric Armstead, or one of the tight ends who I feel like they're going to bring that dad energy. I don't even know if any of them have kids. But I get that vibe of like, we're going to get some dad energy here. I respect that. We need that Chris Manhertz energy, if you may, that we've been lacking since he departed for the Denver Broncos a couple years ago. But after seeing Brian bring up the kicking team, I realized we haven't given the specialists any awards. Logan Cook has not only, now he will be a dad 3 times over. Round of applause for Logan and Mary. But Logan has evolved, and I say this as his friend, like, and I've said it to multiple people in the building, like, he is now the dad. Like, he is the old head, not only in that room, but in that locker room, which I think is amazing, to the point that once upon a time, and by once upon a time, I mean 5 years ago, when Ross Madison got to town, Logan was like bringing him around everywhere and like tagging along with him, Batman and Robin. And now we live in a world where that's Cam Little and Ross, and Logan's just hanging out with his kids, and he's the dad.
That's awesome. One of our best paper played words of the show, I think. That was a really good one. Someone in the comments said, can Tony Baselli be office dad? We'll give Tony office mom. How about that?
Hey, there we go. There we go. I love it. Before we get out of here, Gus, any other paper plate awards from you want to rattle through?
Yeah, let me just rattle a couple off. How to immediately go viral. That one goes to Liam Cohen. Class Clown Award. This would have been a good one for the Cleveland Browns, but I wrote down Chris Ballard just because I absolutely still do not understand bringing Daniel Jones to be the starting quarterback over Anthony Richardson, or to even compete with Anthony Richardson. We've been standing in line for hours now award. It goes to Trevor Lawrence, because like, I don't think we need to talk more about this. Me and Demetrius on yesterday's show talked extensively about Trevor Lawrence, if you are looking for Lawrence content, but like, we've been kind of waiting around for a while, right? Like 2022 had some really, really great flashes in the second half of that season, but we've been staying around for a while. We're kind of like waiting. We're like, well, we're sure it's good, but like, is it really worth like the investment? So yeah, no, I think Trevor's going to have a great season, but we have been staying around waiting for a little bit. Let's see. The only other ones that I have are kind of Dundee themed from The Office.
Honestly, maybe we should have named these the Dundies. Not that relates to the Jaguars in any way, but yeah, as paper plate awards are fun to say, but the Dundies, well said.
So there's some pretty solid ones. So longest engagement, which went to Pam in The Office. This one goes to Cam Ward, because we knew for the longest time that Cam Ward was going to be drafted by the Titans at first overall. And I wanted to like put that in there and bring it up just because I think it's so funny that like Cam Ward didn't really get nearly the amount of national attention that he probably should have for being the first overall pick, because the Jaguars traded up to second overall to get Travis Hunter. So that was the talk of the first round, the talk of the entire draft weekend, really. And then the schedule release was last night. The Titans have 0 primetime games for their first overall quarterback, Cam Ward. So just thought that was kind of funny. Show Me the Money Award, which was given to Oscar in The Office, goes to De'Ami Brown, going back to kind of what you're saying, talking about players who could get bags, players who are kind of in contract years. I think De'Ami Brown, obviously he's on a 1-year deal, and so he's going to be looking for a fresh contract in the 2026 offseason. So De'Ami Brown's saying, show me the money. The Don't Go In There After Me Award, which was given to Kevin in The Office, goes to Trent Baalke, because the Jaguars clearly do not like anything that he did with the roster. They like a couple of things, obviously. But like, yeah, as someone said in the comments, Devin Lloyd, his 5th-year option was not picked up. The Jaguars did not re-sign any of their impending free agents this offseason. Yeah, they clearly took a blowtorch to the roster as much as they could. They cut not just Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, but also Gabe Davis. Yeah.
You knew we couldn't get out of here without a Trent Baalke reference. I'm honestly upset with myself that I didn't give any paper plate awards to him.
And my last one, Mia, Extreme Repulsiveness, which is given to Toby in The Office. This is how Texans fans will feel about Christian Kirk after Jordan Lewis locks him up twice in 2025.
Wow. Fighting words from Gus Logue at the finish.
Yeah, I meant to say this. I was going to ask you this when we were talking about the schedule at the top of the show, but like, what single game stands out to you as like the most interesting, or like the one that like you're circling on your calendar, et cetera, et cetera? To me, I think it's probably the week 3 home game against the Texans, just because it's Liam Cohen's offense against D'Amico Ryan's defense. It's Trevor Lawrence versus CJ Stroud. It's Christian Kirk's revenge game. It's the first game between these two teams since Trevor Lawrence got concussed in a brutal way last season. So there's a lot of history, a lot of interest, a lot of feelings in regard to this game. And so I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the linchpin game. I don't want to say that game is going to determine the trajectory of the Jaguars season, but I do think it'll say a lot about the mental toughness of this Jacksonville Jaguars team under Liam Cohen and James Gladstone. Because this is the two-time defending division champ who has stolen the division from underneath you each of the last 2 years, because I'm sorry, I refuse to believe that the Houston Texans would have won many other divisions in the National Football League last year with some of the warts that they had on that roster. I would also argue, and again, unfortunately, it's so early in the season, but I'm fascinated by the Cincinnati Bengals for a variety of reasons. We know historically they don't play well in the month of September under Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. But at the same time, they have Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow has had the upper hand on the Jaguars every single time the Bengals have played. Even when Jake Browning was under center, the Bengals got the best of the Jaguars. And I also think that it's going to be such a proof of concept game, because this idea of you paid your 2 wide receivers, who knows what Trey Hendrickson's situation will be. They've continued to draft defense in the first round and have continued to miss because Shamar Stewart, please prove me wrong, but I've got questions. So that's where I look at the Cincinnati Bengals and this idea of their offensive line. They're going to patchwork because screw it. Jamar's down there somewhere. T. Higgins is down there somewhere. I don't believe the Jaguars are building a similar roster. And in turn, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how these two teams stack up, knowing that, yes, the Jaguars have 2 shiny toys of their own at wide receiver, but they also are committed to building through the trenches.
Absolutely. Lots and lots to look forward to in the 2025 season. That was a really fun show. Appreciate everyone for joining. We do have a special announcement, though. Mia, you want to take it away?
I will take it away, although maybe you should lead us off, Gus, because you're the one who's got the big moves.
Yeah. I'll lead off and you can kind of fill in the blanks. The special announcement from me, I'll also be saying this on tomorrow's show, but tomorrow will be my last show on Duval Rundown. I've decided to leave 1010XL after 2 amazing years. Have nothing but great things to say about everyone at 1010XL. For me personally, it's basically just I want to do less videoing and more writing. And so you can make sure to follow me on Blue Sky and on Twitter /X at Gus_Logue. I'll have some updates for you guys on social media throughout the offseason. I would definitely be continuing to cover the Jaguars in 2025 and beyond. But yeah, no longer with 1010XL. But thank you to everyone there. Thank you to you, Mia, especially for everything over the past 2 years. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed this show for sure. But excited for what's next.
Social. We just started liking you, Gus. What's going on? Cracking up. I will echo what Dell also just threw in the comments of how he told me when you were brought on that you would be a great hire, and we never wavered. We knew that Gus would be an elite addition to 1010XL. Certainly an opportunity for us to elevate our reporting and our X's and O's in the multimedia department and throughout the ecosystem that is 1010. And That's exactly what's come to fruition. And certainly launching Duval Rundown, we really felt like we were lacking not only in the live podcast space at 1010XL, but really starting to get a bit thin, with all due respect to our Jaguars podcast. They're on the weekly side of things. We felt like we needed more of a daily program. Gus has taken it and run with it. We will be continuing Duval Rundown. Don't worry, boys. Don't worry, gals. We will be back. For the rest of the off-season program, we will go to 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It'll be myself and Frank Frangie on Mondays. I know it gets a little wonky because of the holiday and then mini camp and some other stuff thrown in there, but the goal is Monday, if not Tuesday. Wednesdays will be myself and Hayes Carlion, and then Friday we will have a rotating guest. We also will continue Duval Rundown in the fall. The full Monday through Friday lineup is still to come. On Sundays, we will still have myself and Hacker for the instant reaction show. Don't worry, Hacker's still going to be here too, as he's definitely listening right now while he's at the doctor's office, and I haven't texted him back about something else. We're not getting rid of Hack. Hack's still going to be here. You'll still see the truth teller, Rick Ballou, from time to time as well. We're hoping to introduce even more new characters, not just from 1010XL, but the Jaguars universe. I think a lot of you can interpret that. And so we're very excited. And I want you all to know that this is a commitment from the top, from 1010, and from the Jacksonville Jaguars. There have been a lot of great conversations here in the last 2 weeks since, Gus informed us of his decision, which, by the way, we're very excited for Gus because at his core, Gus is a writer and a reporter, and I'm so excited for him to get back to that. But there's a lot of conversations at the top that they want to be invested here with you guys on Duval Rundown on the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel. So we're not going anywhere. Hang tight. Although we will miss the one and only Gus Logue.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's more of a see you later rather than a goodbye, but certainly a lot of exciting things on the future, both for me, but especially for 1010XL and Duval Rundown. As you said, it is not going anywhere. Someone said, Gus, will you still come on for guest commentary / post-game spots? I don't know about post-game spots. Maybe. I'm sure I'll be back at some point in some regard. Would love to be a guest on the show. And so, again, I think it's more of a see you later and not a goodbye, especially because, again, I will be covering the 2025 Jaguars in some capacity. So if you're still interested in following my work, you can find it at Gus_Logue on Twitter /X and on Blue Sky. But yeah, I'll share the same message on tomorrow's show in a little Gus farewell episode, I guess, with Hacker. And then after that, leaving it in Mia's hands to continue Duval Rundown. But yeah, I guess unless you have anything else to add, Mia, that'll do it for today's show. Mia, thank you as always. Thank you for everything. I'll be back with Hacker tomorrow at 9:04 a.m. Eastern. Thank you to all of our watchers, all of our listeners, and especially to our commenters. Appreciate you guys. See you tomorrow.